Hello.
Hello.
Hi.
That's our little hellos are our intro, and it's always funny to see what some people it takes them like a few minutes and they're like, "Oh, hey." Um so we are here with Oakley. We had some technical problems, but she's very patient, and her backdrop is
Hmm.
tell us Oakley where you are in the world.
I am in the Isle of Skye in Scotland.
Yes. And it's really beautiful. When I see your pictures and videos, it reminds me of like Lord of the Rings. Did they film Lord of the
That's a
Rings there?
great suggestion. Did you know what? I don't think they did, but every time we drive along the roads, like Skye's known for its large mountains and its backdrop and its scenery, and Lord of the Rings is definitely something. And like also dinosaurs, you could see both
Yeah.
here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, just waterfalls and all sorts of.
Yeah.
When you go on your run, you really like I know you're involved in Noble. I was like, I think, are you one of their athletes or are
Yeah.
you? Yeah. And you could like just be running their advertisements because like you'll hold your Nobles up with like the background. I'm like, I want those shoes, but I think I actually just want to wear them in this environment. But they do really
In that
does a good
background,
job of selling the
agreed.
shoe. Um, well, we are very excited to have you on. And, this kind of, you and I met, I don't even know
Years ago.
when, yeah. And I just
Mhm.
remember having a chat with you. I think the most we talked was at the airport leaving the games.
I think you were
And
right.
yeah, we
Yeah.
like sat at the table and chatted it up. But obviously, you live in the UK.
I
And
do.
so we haven't had a chance, even when I worked for CrossFit, to really cross paths too much. But I do recall, even from that conversation, and I think talking to Carl Stedman, he said it best that you're like this old soul, and you're like
Calm.
you're an old soul, but when I started following your stuff, I just was like inspired, and like there's an authenticity to what you do, and yeah, I find it really like I said before, you sort of have a very colorful life and you seem to be involved in a lot of different things and certainly an untraditional CrossFit gym. And so I thought this would be a kind of a good conversation to
Hopefully.
have.
Well, thank you for that because it's
Yeah.
I guess everyone's got the journey, and like the social media I don't find is a easy thing to handle a lot of the time. Sort of in and out with it. So it's the one of the biggest thing is that for me anyways that people know that it is authentic or feel that. So I really appreciate you saying that. It's nice to hear.
Mm.
Yeah, it is good to get that feedback. And in your case, sometimes you don't want to depict things that are inaccurately beautiful, but you do actually like it's probably accurate. Um, so tell us a little bit about like what you do, what's your day to day, what are you doing these days?
So I do own my gym, which is called Forest Flow CrossFit, and I'll be honest, I have got that to the point now where I never wanted to be like the forefront of the gym, like the only person that kept it together or that was known for that. So it is very much a group effort. And in order for the gym to function, Forest Flow, like I'm so grateful for the coaches that I've got because they are also what makes the gym. So as much as I used to coach there, like 24/7, it's now at the point where I do a couple of classes a week at the gym and then I'm in the background running everything else. And it has also allowed me the opportunity then to look at other avenues because I opened the gym back in 2020, which was really great
Wow.
timing surrounding
Mm.
COVID, but it is what it is.
Mhm.
And I guess since then, everyone grows, everyone evolves, and I've been quite wonderfully pulled into other avenues as well. So I work for a charity called the 180 Project, and the majority of my time now during the week is spent going into prison. So we go into a prison local to us and soon to be a couple of other prisons as well, and we teach the lads in there we teach them CrossFit, and it is CrossFit. We are affiliated, but I say that because it's so much more. It's
Mm.
more so about building and changing community, because our prime focus is to help people going through drug, alcohol, mental health issues, which many people maybe don't understand, but is literally the vast majority of people in prison. So we've got,
Right.
so we're in there pretty much every day, and I then help the program, because the big thing about the program is that the lads come out into our outside program. So we're connected to different services. So we've got a women's program, we've also got a guys program, and I'm not part of it, but the charity itself's got a young offenders program as well, where they come to do CrossFit 3 times a week and have therapy, different sessions, and so
Wow.
on. But then
This
in
is all done
addition
at Forest
to,
Flow.
sorry, what was that?
You do this at Forest Flow CrossFit.
So
You do this at
no,
your gym.
this is, so the prison is actually about 20 minutes from the gym, but the actual charity they set up years ago, with a CrossFit gym, which is about 40 minutes down the road from where mine is, with the sole function to be a sort of rehabilitation place through movement.
Wow.
I know that
Wow.
it's amazing what they've done. Really, really
Yeah.
special. So they set up, and their sort of ethos was to have the prime focus of the space be used for rehabilitation, but alongside that, to try and cover the cost, was to be a fully functioning CrossFit gym. So that's actually called
Hmm.
CrossFit Delta Fox. So I work alongside them, and the hope is that, well, I think next month we're going to have a group of people that are obviously not in prison, but on the outside now, that have come to us and reintegrated, and we're hopefully changing that community. They're going to be coming up to me for sort of days at a time, so that we can encompass the running outside, we can encompass the lake dips and so on, because Delta Fox is very much, your usual industrial space. They've not really got
Sure.
that access
Yeah.
to outside. But yeah, so
Yeah, that's amazing.
Yeah.
That's
it's
great.
very
Yeah,
cool.
so you guys, I mean, that part, what got you, like, I guess, what part of your experience with CrossFit and people, had you
Yeah.
be interested in getting involved in that? And also sort of, because I've seen that was one of the things that I noticed right away, that you guys did I know there's like the mental health swims and you were sort of involved, but you guys on your own go and do dips, like kind of
Mhm.
before it was cool.
Yeah,
Like you do
when it
the
was just cold.
it's like, yeah, when it was just like, hey, we're just getting in this lake, and there wasn't like, the tub as we do. But what inspired that, or what was that
Yeah.
about, that part of?
It's a really interesting one, actually, because it's evolved, that one. When I first started, it was very much a thing for me to reconnect with my mind, in the sense that, whenever you get into cold water, the first thing your head says is, "You're gonna die, get out, oh my gosh, you can't do this." But that's just what my head says anyway. And it was the it was the knowing that I could do something that my mind didn't want me to do, or that safety mechanism in my body that was so ingrained is like, no, Oaks, like, you shouldn't be doing this. But if I could show myself there that I could control the thoughts, which then affected my body, my breathing, my temperature, then why couldn't I control those thoughts elsewhere, such as saying a workout or when pushing hard and so on. And I quite liked it for that. But then, as I think it was probably around the COVID time that it started to evolve into something a little bit more. So versus just showing myself that I could do that, it was a really deep connection with nature. So like I prefer dipping in a lake, because it forces
Mhm.
me to make the time for it, to go outside, to connect, to, gosh, there's, especially when, just to look at how wonderful it is, and to just be completely and utterly like cleansed from being in something so lovely. But yeah, that's how it evolved.
Yeah, that's beautiful. And that's kind of your gym. I mean, you guys are in nature. I mean, so that seems like that's been important to you, even in the
pretty
CrossFit
big.
setting?
Yeah,
Yeah.
it was
What is what's the meaning or the significance or the inspiration behind the name Forest Flow?
it's a great question. So it took me a long time to come up with that name, and I actually had a long time to figure it out because I waited because I obviously, well, I know you guys know, but others might not. I teach for CrossFit as well, so I teach the level 1s, level 2s, and kids courses, and have done now for just over 6 years. And I think I've been doing that for about 3 or 4 years before I was like, I want to open my own space, but I didn't want it to be a space that was, I guess, your normal industrial unit. And I just
Mhm.
remember the amount of times I'd be working in a gym and it'd be so dark, and I'd be like, I just can't. This isn't very, very nice to be in, especially for coaches that are there all day. Like your
Right,
soul's just
right.
being
You're just
pulled.
cold, like, to your bones. Yeah, like, when it's time to move at lunch, you're like, "I just wanna go lay under that blanket."
You're
Yeah,
like, wrap me next to the radiator, please.
right.
Mm.
So my landlord, my now landlord, I met him by chance, and he said, I will build you a space, I'll make it work on this random country park, which is where we are now. And it took him about 9 months to actually find us something. So in those 9 months, it was okay, well, what is the name? What is it? And we were meant to originally be in a forest, and we're not far off that. We're not quite in a forest, but obviously we've got many trees around. So that was where forest came from. And then flow, because for me, it encompasses, I guess, every aspect of life. And it's something that, and I know this goes against everything that flow is. I wanted to say striving for, but then we're obviously not in flow and we're striving for something. But it's just that reminder to be, that rather than pushing for something, just to allow whatever comes to come. And I thought
Mhm.
for me that that was something that I missed in many different gyms, when the effects of training were so profound in more than just the physical aspect, but what the mental aspect brought as well. I was like, these two things can't really be separate. Like, we need them together. And if I'm going to open a space, they are going to be together. So that's the name.
Yeah.
Wow. Do you find that like so you were working in gyms, teaching a lot, traveling, coaching. Did you find that sort of being in flow, the experience of flow was yeah, and agreed, like not like easier or more difficult, but perhaps more natural when you were more closely connected to nature versus, a more urban or city type of, or, just industrial thing. Like, what do you see as the connection? Because you're obviously, um, you have like a large spectrum of environments that you perform the same thing in, which I think is
Yeah.
interesting. Anything from like, yep, a prison to the forest and in
Yeah.
between. How do you find that your environment connects or, allows for this experience of flow?
And that's also a great question as well, because it's an interesting one in that from that I took, it was along the lines of, is there a greater connection to nature? Is there a greater connection to flow, sorry, when being closer to nature? And I'd say that that might be different for everyone, in that I know there's many people that I've met that can be just as easily in that state, but in your urban environment. I think that probably
Sure.
is connected to who you are as an individual.
Mm,
And as a result of that, I'd say that that flows maybe coming back to, rather than the environment, more about knowing yourself to know which environment suits you.
mm,
However, coming back to the fact that I do have the profound opposites of, in a prison environment, we can't go out in without keys. In addition to that, if we want daylight in the sports hall, we have to open the door, but it's connected by a like your normal prison door, which you'd imagine with the bars coming down, it's connected with that.
Right.
There's like
yeah.
grass. And the funny thing is, you walk through the yard and there's ducks. So like there's ducks in the main prison yard, and like, well, nature definitely finds a way to survive
Yeah.
anywhere, but the change in environment, I think, oh gosh, this might be a bit much, but for me, I'd say it's more about the energy surrounding that environment than the environment itself. And the energy in the prison, for example, it was hard to coach in initially for me because there's so many residual energies, so many other people in there, so many other feelings, that it was more about creating that space and setting the tone there versus the actual environment itself as being the building and the prison and so on. But that
Yeah.
being said, I think it's just a bit easier for me going to somewhere that is more connected with nature to find that, to create that. It doesn't take as much work to create that safe space.
Mm.
Yeah.
Yeah, when you're describing this to me, it's almost like flow is nature in a sense,
Yes,
and
it could be.
like modern living disconnects us from it,
High
which isn't to say
potential.
that it's impossible to experience it, like, but it might take more of that concerted effort.
Yeah.
But it is part of like the human experience now. It's pretty known. What is the biophilia is like that the relationship of humans and um, nature. And so there's studies that show like even if you have a photo of a tree in your office or like a plant, like there's a that's a more healthy thing than if you didn't, which is crazy. Like that's how strong that connection is. And you know
Wow.
all the Japanese things of like forest bathing, and they have a culture where they bring people who have like high blood pressure and different issues out and just sit in the forest, and it actually impacts their health markers. Like,
Wow.
you know, so we live right by Manhattan and we're not really big city people.
No.
And that's like an understatement. And when we come back, it's like our entire system, like, I don't know. I think people adjust and adapt to your point. So you kind of have to find a way probably to find peace, but I don't know that it's maybe ideal.
I'm with you.
So that's really amazing to like create what you wanted and like to have sort of said like this is what I want that to be and to bring that to
Yeah,
your
wow.
members. That's
How
really
cool.
amazing.
Thanks, guys.
So you're right now in your Airbnb.
I
So you
am.
guys have an Airbnb, and that's like how far is that from your gym?
That is a 7-hour drive.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
So you got to like work to get there.
We
And
got
you just
work.
drive there.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but it's an effort.
Yeah. And what was the intention? Because you guys have spent some time there as well. Like you don't just always have it rented out. Like what was the, so you went from like a beautiful place where you have your gym to now like another
Yes.
beautiful place.
Yeah, so it was always something we'd wanted to do. And it was, if anyone out there is considering an Airbnb, I'd say think twice. Because it
Good.
seems really easy and really simple and maybe isn't quite, but we were quite, well, I was quite spontaneous, especially in our relationship. I am probably the most spontaneous one, and I'll make it work and it'll happen. And my husband is very much the how, what, when.
Yeah.
Happy to know it's
I'm
not
like,
just
let's
us.
do it. Where there's a will, there's a way.
Exactly, I agree. Yep. But I guess we need that. We need someone to help ground us. And we did the North Coast 500, which I don't know if you've heard about, but over here there's a road that goes along like the north of Scotland, and it's called
Okay.
the North Coast 500, and it is absolutely beautiful. Like the beaches are beaches that you'd think you'd see in the Mediterranean or something crazy like that. Usually a lot colder, but it's beautiful. And
Yeah.
we did that last May, and Skye, where I am now, was our last stop off. So we thought, well, we'll stop off in Skye. We'd never been before, and we both just knew. We were like,
Yeah.
this is the place. We spoke about an Airbnb for years. If we're going to do it, this is the place. And we'd found this house, which we were not when we saw it online, we were like, oh no, we'll go and view it just in case.
Mhm.
And we viewed it, and the views, we were sold straight away. The pictures just didn't do it justice, and we were like, this is the place. And then we bought the house come August. So
Wow.
that's where we
Wow.
are now. Yeah.
Amazing. So you did your workout there today. I saw your
I did.
photo. So we have been having this thing where we have our guests, or we invite them. We don't make anybody do anything, but we
Yeah.
invite them to do a workout. And sort of to your point before about, the workouts or gyms being about more than just the physical, that's kind of, that is between the ears. Like, the workout is an excuse to practice something that's much deeper, or, a mindset. So it was funny because when I sent you, and there's the dose online, I saw you went in and checked it out. It's funny because every week we only post that week's. And so like the others disappear. And one of the reasons for that is people that do it every week, trying to keep it from being this like pile on, oh my
Yeah.
gosh, I didn't do last week. I have to like do that. Cause then it becomes this stressful thing. And it's just like being in the moment. And this is the weeks. And if you do it, okay. And if you don't, okay, then a new one comes up. But so I had sent you one, and it wasn't like a good fit equipment wise. And so then I sent you a different one. And then because you're up there, you didn't have a bike. And it was funny because your question being like, is that okay? It's like, of course. And it sounded like that was sort of a freeing answer for you.
It really
Um,
was.
yeah. And it's cool because we've had different people do the same one. And often people will come on and be like, did I do it right?
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, there is no right, and it's like more about just what the experience was. So I think the one that you were doing was like the every minute on the minute, the fire
Yeah.
plunge, which is kind of funny because you do the cold plunges, and we had started doing cold plunges in January. And so Bill came up with this fire plunge, which maybe, I don't know if it was part of this, but we were doing the cold plunge for maybe initially 2 minutes. And then I did the bike one. And after like 2 minutes, a minute and then a minute, I was like, this is so much more painful than ice water. Like, so I think that's where the name kind of, okay, well, that's a cold plunge. This is a fire plunge. So I think that's the one you did. And the notion is every minute, and you're, you know, getting to some number, and hope, challenging is sort of the thing there because it's about your tolerance. So tell us kind of what you did and what your, what came up for you.
That's really cool. So whether and this just shows my, I guess, preconditioning with the programming that I've done in the past, but whether I did this correctly or not, I so I didn't have a sled, so I did have a dumbbell. So I switched it to either moving with the dumbbell and doing lunges, or running with the dumbbell on my shoulders. I thought, well, it's not quite the same as a sled, but it's as close as I can possibly get it, and I'm moving a load, so I'll stick to that. And then
Mm-hmm.
the second minute was burpees, and I went with your suggestion of doing two and adding
Oh, right.
two every minute, and then the third minute was rest, and it was for 60 minutes. So the way I did it was I kept to the lunges, and I made sure I kept to the same number. So as my burpees increased, I was trying to hold myself accountable to not letting
Mm-hmm.
that slip. And then I
Mm-hmm.
added two every reps for the burpees. And then I got to 22 and I failed my 24. So then I went back to two and then went up again. Was that? And then on
Oh,
the
wow.
last,
Yes. Well, you're a very good
My
athlete, so
God, you're
yes.
fit.
no. But
Phil's like, wait, I'm sorry, what? Okay, so then you went back up. Yes, Phil's not.
46,000.
we don't ever count the reps. We
So
don't
you
need
went
to.
back. So you went back up. So did you get back to 24? Did you exceed
No,
24?
no. So I,
Okay.
I
Okay.
went,
Thank
I,
God. Okay,
yeah,
thank God.
no, I did not. So I got to 24 and then dropped it back down. And then I think I got back to 18 as I was going back up. but then it came to the 59th minute, and I know it said on the 59th minute, go for what you didn't complete. So I did,
Mhm.
and I didn't complete it in the minute, but I did it. So
Yeah.
that is what
That
it
was,
is.
yeah.
But yeah, I
Yeah,
guess,
so that's awesome, and that's, I mean, I'm sure, and that's obviously you probably the mindset for that one, which was kind of, I thought, a great one, like seeing it through, like, because a lot of people who have done that, the beginning, there's a lot of time because it's a death by, and so you're sort of, my experience of it, I had a lot of projections about what was going to come. How was that experience of sort of,
yeah.
the progression?
And I guess it sort of makes it worse, even though you're doing less work at the thought of what your mind's projecting versus just being with it. I can
Mhm.
definitely relate to
Yeah,
that.
so what was the beginning of that like for you? Like what was the beginning? Because this is an interesting kind of theme, I think, that when I did it, I was experiencing, it was let's say maybe the second round. So 5 or 6 minutes in, you do the sled push. Okay, fine. And then you do like one burpee. I did one
Okay.
because you're way
Much
fitter than
less
I.
fit than
Yeah, I'm
you.
way less fit than you. And then like two. And then it's like, it's almost like this like agitation that like I could be doing literally anything else right now. And this is stupid. This is silly. You know what I mean? Like I'm doing
I
two
know what you
burpees and
mean.
then yeah. And so what was that like for you at the beginning?
So I'm sorry, before I answer that, I just feel I've got to say thank you for sharing that, because I have for many years thought, what is wrong with me? And I mean this in the sense that, so I genuinely have, where people that I've trained with and the people that I have trained with and spent time around have been people that have been very focused on getting to, say, the CrossFit Games or get into a very high level in competition with CrossFit. And in the sessions that they would do or I would do alongside, I am an individual known for going in, getting it done, and getting out. And I don't dally around. If there's a rest period, I don't like doing the rest period. I'll maybe do an every minute on the minute of heavy snatches instead of 2 minute rest. And they're like, what's wrong with you, O? It's like, just take the rest. So the fact that someone else feels
Yeah.
that agitation, it makes me feel a lot better, because
Yeah.
I've felt the same, where in this workout it was, oh gosh, if it was any other day other than today, I'd have probably felt more agitated, because I'd have had a list of things to do that I was like, my attention's needed elsewhere,
Mhm.
versus giving
Right.
myself the attention of, no, sorry, giving myself the ability to basically give myself attention, if that makes sense, by
Yeah,
doing
yeah,
the workout as
Yeah.
it does.
prescribed and not taking away the rest. But for today, I like, where I am, I've purposefully not given
Yeah.
myself any things to do. And as a result, it
Mhm.
was it was genuinely pure enjoyment in doing the workout, that I was giving myself the opportunity to take as long as it needed. Whereas that
Mhm.
is not something that I've often done in the past and still practice to do now.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean it's just amazing how similar people are with categories of folks and CrossFit, functional fitness, high intensity work, like this type of physical expression is typically not one for the person who likes to avoid doing difficult things.
Yeah.
And yet, for many, the three of us in different ways, the most difficult thing sometimes to do is just not do anything. And the mind starts to whisper little things that become more and more convincing or then turn into shouts. And it's like, okay, well, let me just scratch that itch. So I avoid or, ameliorate this unpleasant experience. But it's like, yeah, but you're somebody who is also enjoying unpleasant experiences because of their cathartic, challenging, transformative nature. But it's like, it's just an amazing thing how sometimes the hardest thing is not doing anything, or the hardest thing is, like you said, inviting and allowing yourself to be able to be with yourself and to have that just for the sake of enjoying. It's a
Absolutely.
wonderful thing.
Yeah, and that was sort of I think the interesting mindset, like the seeing it through for me. That was because I also probably fall into that category of efficiency, or I don't need that time, or just the discomfort of the thoughts starting to wander. And then it is funny because you're at the end holding these very challenging rounds, and you're like, remember back when I was just standing there, like, okay, but this is really uncomfortable. So just learning to appreciate, you know, like not projecting and not anticipating and not just like being where you are in that moment. And obviously,
Yeah.
presence is a big thing for people in today's environment that can be challenging. Um, and the hard stuff will come, and it's there, but just knowing when to give yourself a break, maybe, and when to push.
It's true.
Um, yeah. You were saying that like some of the programming you've done as a competitor. So you've competed in at like the semifinals, and mostly you've done some individual and some team. What's that
Yeah, so
been like?
I was on a team that went to the games quite a few years ago now, and then since then, in all honesty, after the games with the team, I was like, do I want is this what I really want to do? Because we definitely sacrificed a lot leading up to that games experience, and I think it probably for me came down to the actual experience of the games of like, was that worth it? Which was a hard question for someone at my age to ask myself, because
Because how old
that
were you?
I think I was 19, 20 or 19, somewhere around there. But it was everything I thought I wanted, if that like resonates, where it was, this is everything that I've been working towards, building towards. And it was a bit of a, oh, maybe not quite what I
Mm-hmm.
expected. And then since then, it was, can the competitive side still allow me to shine through as me? Or in order to be a high level competitor in some format, do I have to lose parts of myself in order to get there? And that was, I guess that's probably been the journey since then. And so I went into the individual side after quite a little bit of like trying to figure that out and trying to gain a little bit more self-awareness surrounding that. And I guess not really come to an answer with it, but again, just trying to go with the flow of it, of sometimes potentially other times that's not what I want, but that's okay to not be what I want as well. But yeah, so many different programs and different experiences within that.
Yeah. I really appreciate you saying that because I think it speaks to, well, there's a lot of value in there, but I think one of the things it speaks to is that we have this little thing that if the degree to which you're training can kind of be can be a measure of it can be the degree to which you're sacrificing.
Yeah.
If there's no sacrifice, you're not training.
Yeah.
You might be doing a lot. Doing a lot is probably not the best training because you're
Yeah,
trying to do everything, right? Like,
exactly.
and as an athlete, as like a capital A athlete, there will be a time where there will be parts of you, characteristics, personalities, interests that need to be sacrificed or perhaps muted a little bit.
Yeah, that's a really good way of
And
putting it.
I'm curious to know if that lesson as 18, 19, 20-year-old Oakley wasn't quite learned, like you didn't know that, but the process of getting to the games might have kind of crystallized it or shown you, like, because you said, hey, it was everything I thought it would be, but then all of a sudden you get there and you're like, wait a second. This
Yeah.
isn't everything I thought it would be. So would you mind digging in a little deeper to your, knowing yourself process, athlete train, like,
Yeah,
because
of
I think
course.
this is, yeah.
Well, so there was that, and it was I think it was for me personally, and there was a lot of things that came up because I feel like what you've mentioned there about the lesson was probably that at the time the lesson itself in its core was something that I was learning and had come to fruition following the games, the feelings that came up. But I think since then, it's continued to be a lesson that hasn't necessarily stopped because the
Mhm.
competitive side of CrossFit has still been something that I find certainly interesting. And more so
Mhm.
recently, I think part of it has come down to the fact that and I think a lot of the things that, this is just my opinion, but a lot of the lessons that come up may be due to things that have happened in the past to us, maybe due to perceptions that we've maybe not realized we employ, but have been encouraged by whether that family or society. And the lessons are a way for us to regain our focus and to reconnect with ourselves. So the way that I've found recently is when I was younger, and this is definitely not a bad thing at all because it is a lesson. But my grandma got me into Jiu Jitsu very young, and she had me doing Jiu Jitsu from like the age of 5. And bear in mind,
Mm.
it's only recently I've put this together after years and years of trying to sort of understand this process. And then it suddenly clicks when it's meant to click. And
Sure.
she had me competing in jiu-jitsu around the world at the age of like 12. So the competition aspect and working hard and sacrificing has always been known. It's always been and that's something that's definitely followed me through in other areas of life, which is probably why I am at the point where I am, where I own a gym, I guess a flow master on staff. Like if there's something that I envision is something that I'd like to get, I will work hard for it. I'll work my ass off, whatever that
Yeah.
is, which is something I'm grateful for my parents for because they've obviously helped me along there in understanding that. But that sacrifice was always known. Like, oh gosh, I used to train from like 15. I would be at jiu-jitsu 4 times a week whilst other people were going out and eating and drinking and so on. And
Yeah.
it's because we had like the British Championships coming up or something like that. And so for me, I'll be honest, I don't think I ever gave myself the choice of what I wanted. And then I got my black belt in jiu-jitsu and I'd won like I was British champion, world champion. There wasn't anywhere else to go. And that's when I found
Mm.
CrossFit. And it just
Mm.
pulled me into the same experience, I suppose, where it was, okay, well, I don't know anything else. Competition, strive hard, work hard, be the best that you can be, compete against other individuals. And that was it. And for me, going to the games, because probably of the sacrifice, it made me question my why. And I couldn't tell you. I didn't have a genuine, why am I doing this for me, other than it being potentially because it's something that I'd learned growing up and never given myself the
Sure.
opportunity to, or never realized that it maybe wasn't something I wanted, but potentially what someone else had wanted for me. Um, that's not to say that I haven't enjoyed and didn't enjoy the training and the experiences that I've had, but as time's gone on, I've realized that moving my body and training is something that I feel I'll always enjoy. But the sacrifice that you've got to make to be a high level athlete means I can't work in the prison and help these lads rehabilitate and find new communities. And I can't be an affiliate owner that is there every weekend, helping my members along, being part of the community that I've created. And I was like, and it's taken me a while to get this, but it's not a lesser of a thing to want to do those things over being an athlete. Like, they're both great. It doesn't make you less of a person, but it's just a decision. I found that coming back to what you want is the most important thing that you can have to drive those decisions. But yeah, sorry, that was rather a long-winded answer.
I think it's a beautiful answer. I think it's a wise answer. Yeah, and it's your answer, and thank you for sharing.
Thank you. Thanks for listening.
I do have to ask a question. Do you still do jujitsu?
No, I do. I've been back on the mat a few times and I have loved it. It's like a piece of me comes back
Okay,
because it's so much
cool.
enjoyment now. But the reason
Yeah.
I don't is because, or haven't in the past, is I couldn't let go of that athlete side, the
Yeah.
CrossFit side. I just couldn't, because I think it was such a big part of my personality. And this is going a bit bigger, but it was so connected to my worth that I was like, oh my gosh, if I'm not competing, is anyone even going to want to come to my gym? Is anyone going to want to listen or like be a part of the things that I put out? And for me, the athlete side was what gave me worth in getting to do the things that I wanted to do the most, because that's what I believed people would respect more than actually putting who I was as a coach out there, if coach is the right term. But the jiu-jitsu side is now, sorry, going back to it, I didn't do it because I didn't want to get injured, and there was a lot
Hmm.
of possibility
Yeah.
of that happening when you're rolling on the floor and so on. But
Mm.
there was one of my members is actually an ex-cage fighter, and I moved about 45 minutes up the road 6 years ago now to move in with my now husband. And so I moved away from all of our like dojos and training, and he was from the area and he was like, Oaks, there's this place, like you need to get back on the mat. So he sorted out a gym social for us and we went, and he was like, right, come on then, let's go, me and you. And it's like a common banter thing, like,
Yeah.
nah, she can't do that. Like, she's too nice. No, I can't imagine Oaks
Yeah.
like tapping someone out. And it was
Yeah.
the best thing ever, but I tapped him out. And I
That's
was
so
so
funny.
proud. I was like, it's still
Yeah.
there. But I'd
Yeah.
never
Hey,
been back
what
on
do I look
since.
like when there's no more blood going to your brain? I'd like to, like you just
I'll show
blood
you
choke
now. Here
someone.
we go.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
It was great. It
Yeah.
was fun. But no, not quite the same as what it used to be.
Sure. Yeah, I have struggled with that since I stopped playing soccer/football.
Yeah.
Um, I couldn't turn it off. Like if I put cleats on, and if I stepped between white lines, I changed.
Yeah.
And I was playing in this like little league, and it's been
We tried to do like there's a league. So we recently, sold our CrossFit gym, but it's kind of fun now because we go there more just to participate now. Like we participate in the open and we are there for open gym, and people are like, this is like a renaissance. I'm like, it is. So it's nice to be part of something, and not just
Totally
be,
can relate.
but it's, such a great community. And I guess a couple springs ago, there's like in that town, there's like different leagues. There's like a club thing that,
like adult leagues.
yeah, they organize
Yeah.
these adult leagues, and it's fun. And someone who also had played soccer, there's a couple ex footballers, and they're like, let's get a team together. I'm like, oh, that's perfect. Bill can play, and he played at a very high level, and it did not go well. It did not go well.
I mean,
What happened?
well, first of all, I like pulled my hamstring, which was the worst
Oh
thing.
no.
I remember one game where it started getting chippy, and there's just a lot of reasons why I don't want to be a form of myself that I was. And I never liked the mouthing, basically people who suck take out their aggression of not being well through cheap little fouls, little chips, this and that. When it matters, competition, certain levels, I get it. It's part of the deal. On a weekend league, it doesn't matter. And I had my kind of glory days that were glorious, that were really amazing and were awesome. And those are done. Like, I've heard my final whistle and I'm good with it, So I understand not everybody had that, but like, I also
the environment.
Yeah, like
yeah,
I
it was
just
a mismatch.
Yeah, like
it was a
and
mismatch.
nothing bad happened really, but like there was a couple times where it's like, all right, I could possibly injure this person if I act naturally. And I don't want to do that because that's not appropriate. And, all of that. My senior year of college, we play in the fall, and that's when our season finishes up. In the winter, there's like indoor leagues and stuff because where we live, it's, snow and stuff. And the company that I signed a contract with, like a corporate company
for finance, like
for
a
finance,
job.
Yeah.
I interned there my summer before my senior year, and they're like, "Hey, you did good. We want to hire you. Just don't fail out of school." So like, right on. So going into senior year, I was like, "This is great. I'm just playing soccer, and pretty much stress free." So one of the dudes emails me or whatever. He's like, "Hey, we're doing a summer league or a winter league. Once your season finishes up, that'd be cool. Like, work, good for networking, good way to meet people at the firm." And I'm like, "Yeah, right on. Like, that's cool." Well, I had a great senior year, but like the way it ended was rough, like just gutting. And so it's like, okay, fine. And that ends in maybe November. In December, this winter league starts up. Okay. This is like a corporate, like against other companies. And there's a couple people who can play. Well, this one person is like chippy and like cheap. And I'm like, hey. So I go up to him and like, there's a dead ball, they get a foul called. And I'm like, hey, just fucking stop. Like right now. Like, just stop. And he's like, mouthing off. I'm like, okay. He gets the ball next, and I just like lay him out. And I leaned over to him and was like, am I gonna have to ask you again? Like, just fucking stop. And he, throws the ball at me or whatever. And I take him and I just like throw him, like kind of like a hit in the chest, but like a throw, and then start stepping towards him because like starting a little fight. And it was like it was just a lot of rage and anger, and I'm really like not actually proud of it because it's pretty pathetic actually. And the guy who no, he fouled someone else. That's what he fouled, one of my teammates, like cheap. And that's where I just went up. I was like, "Fuck you, we're done, we're going." I'm a 21, like I'm a kid too. And the dude who asked me to play was like, hey, like you're super loyal. That's like awesome. And yep, that dude at the firm is a partner, and that's great that you're protecting him. But just remember, like, he's also a partner, and you're sort of representing like Price Waterhouse at this point. Like,
this is not
calm the fuck down. I'm like, Dan, I think I'm gonna not play anymore. I've got some.
Maybe gonna go.
I'm gonna stay in for some therapy. Yeah.
And so anyway, that to your point too, like, just I didn't know how to turn that off.
Yeah.
And
That's
already
cool
heard that final whistle.
that you could engage with like that fun side, and that is like part of who you are. Like, it's great to see that you could tap into that a little bit with your members and like share that with them, but still in like a healthy way.
I'm with you. It was.
So yeah, it was like on the line. You're probably like, it's a fine line.
Was.
Yeah. I mean, it is interesting, the CrossFit stuff. And as I said, like not in a self I'm not saying this in a self-deprecating way. I'm just saying it in like having respect for people who are as fit and accomplished as you. I was nowhere close to your level of athlete, but I still found it hard. And I think I've gotten to a place now where I'm like almost there, but engaging with CrossFit even like, cause you love it for training, you love it for health, like all these things, but there's still that like the open is possibly one of the most unhealthy things. Like I love it, but I also get into it and I'm like just the unhealthy, like whatever, like that workout, maybe I should redo it, the bar height, and it's like, why? Who even cares? This means nothing. And you know, there was a time where yes, redoing something, okay, that would make sense. But why I would redo a workout at this point in my life? But the fact that that's even like in there, I hadn't thrusted a barbell in years. And so I was like, okay. And that initially was like, oh, cool. Let's see what happens. And oh, wow, I did like 125. Like that's more than I could have imagined. And then within 2 hours, I'm like, oh, maybe I could have gone 130, and
Yeah.
so how does that go for you? I mean, have you found a healthy place?
Well, yeah, I'd say I definitely have. In the past, absolutely not, though. In the past, no. If I'm being absolutely honest and sharing like parts of myself that I hope if anyone does hear this, they do think, oh, thank God I'm not alone. But especially after we went to the games, we were the first British team to get to the games, and I know it was ages ago now, and things have changed. But at the time, it was big, and it felt big. And afterwards, especially going into the next Open, all I could think about was people are going to look and think, what's happened to her? Like, why is, because I had an injury going into the games with my shoulder. And after the games, I decided to actually spend time looking at it and trying to get things sorted. And as a result, training really changed. But then obviously when it came around to the Open again, it was like, okay, let's get ready, off we go. And so those were the thoughts in my head. And it was probably 2 or 3 years before I realized these are really, really unhealthy thoughts to have.
Yeah.
Like, first of all, what does it matter if anyone else is even looking at where you place in the leaderboard? Secondly, no one's going to be looking, highly likely. But also, third, why is your performance against other people on a leaderboard more important than your ability to actually be part of a workout and what you can do in it for yourself? And since then, it took me quite a bit of time to go through that and to face that and to, I guess, whether, like, for me personally, I meditate, I journal, I've seen different people, whether that be in relation to energy work, whether that be in relation to like past experiences, different therapists, and so on, because I was like, these aren't healthy thoughts to have surrounding something like this. So if I want to perform better, these need to change, because at the end of the day, if I'm a constant comparison to something else, then we're never ever going to be as good as I could be. So that was the sort of guide to change things up. And then now it's more about, don't get me wrong, those thoughts come. Like, I'll be honest, I did one of the workouts and it went really badly. Not for anything other than, if I'm being absolutely honest, as a woman, certain times a month like hit hard and it hit hard, really hard.
It wasn't good timing.
It was bad timing. And I remember just completing a thruster and then going and sitting in the toilet in like so much cramped pain that my members were like, has she injured herself? Is Oakley injured? I was like, no, guys, this is just real talk, real things that happen. And after that, like, even the thoughts of, do I do it again? Like, does it matter? Like, and I think it's just about now they come up, it's less about thinking, oh, fuck, sorry, but they've come up, and more about being accepting of the fact that they're there and knowing that they don't control me anymore, to be like, I can recognize you, but yeah, I'm actually not going to do it again, and that's okay. Whereas before they would have all consumed me.
Right.
Yeah, and I think that's a huge like, that's such a great point, that there are often people, I think, that believe it's about never having those thoughts or only controlling your thoughts to be a certain way, and that's just not possible. You can't control that they're going to come. But one of the things Bill, he works with younger people too, and one of the things he described to a younger person was like, those thoughts are like people on the street that you might pass, and like you don't have to like stop and say hello and engage, like, but you don't also have to like totally like turn around and ignore them. You can just like, oh hi, and then let them keep going. And I
Yeah.
often think about that sort of just as like a visual with the thoughts, like,
I said that.
yeah, you did.
That's pretty good.
Really nice. I like that
Remember?
analogy.
I like that. I have to
Yeah, and
remember
it's
that.
just like, it's good. Like,
Yeah,
you don't have to engage in them, but the energy to be like, why am I having that thought? I can't have that thought. That's bad. Like, that's not healthy either.
yeah.
Well, I do want to ask you one more thing, because personally, it's like really like for like, I'm very interested in it. So you also, okay, so you were a like world-class Jiu Jitsu. I'm just like accumulating your resume here
Go
because
for
it's like
it.
Jiu Jitsu. Okay. And you're a flow master on staff, and you work with the nonprofit with the prisoners, and you have your own affiliate. But then you also do retreats. And that was something like I sort of have dabbled in, and that's like a
Yeah.
personal just passion. Like, I guess I didn't always appreciate like even just like women's only kind of
Yeah.
energy, and then
Yeah.
since I have really appreciated that more, it's like, wow, this is really special. So what's that, where did that start, and kind of what are you doing with that?
Yeah.
Just, I guess,
So the
curious.
retreats, gosh, where did they start? Oh gosh, it was so I used to work with Lululemon, and they opened a side of the mindset surrounding life that wasn't I didn't have access to before. It hadn't come into like my awareness, and it really
Mm,
prompted a few things. And they used to do a few like special days where, because of like what the brand was, it was more focused on it was more focused around individuals that were like yoga teachers or Pilates
right.
instructors, and like the intensity side, which tended to be the individuals I was around a lot of the time, weren't there. And so the days were very holistic, very focused on wellness. And I remember experiencing a couple of them and thinking, these have been so transformative. I want to be able to um, I'd like to be able to do it for someone else, for others that maybe wouldn't find that as
Sure.
accessible. But I'd also like to take into consideration the fact that some of us maybe need that form of intensity. Like, that's just, if you imagine a hole in which you can speak to an individual, that's the way that you can connect with them, because it's the way that they understand themselves. So that was where they started, and they massively developed, and I'll be honest, I've not planned any this year because I took them for granted in how much energy it takes to do
Yeah.
and hold a
Yeah.
good one, or what I deem as a good one. And
Sure.
holding that space for people is just, it's quite big.
A lot.
It's
Yeah.
wonderful,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
it's big. But
Yeah.
we did, well, I held two last year, and then holding one again in June. And it is, like you just mentioned there, I think it's so special, but something I never expected, especially growing up around like guys. Like, I was the only girl in my family.
Male
So,
energy. Yeah.
yeah, definitely a lot of it. But then being around just females, because I'd never been in a sport team when I was younger, I also didn't experience it there.
Mhm.
It blew my mind how powerful it is. But I never wanted to be one of these individuals that was like maybe a bit over the top on in female and empowerment,
Yes.
but
Yeah.
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
special. It really is special.
Well, they look amazing, and I hear you on like to do it well, and like have all of probably your, like I see in even like the food, like having value in
Yeah.
quality food and the experience and the ambiance and the setting and like the locations you pick, and like it's all just beautiful. And it looks like you also do some weekend things at the gym too, or like one day.
Yeah, we do.
And that I love seeing that. That's awesome.
Thank you. Well, you're always welcome.
I know. So we are excited. We are, for those who don't know, we're going to come hell or high water. We're coming the end of September, and yeah, the Ethos weekend, similarly to what you're speaking of with like holding the space. Um, it's and I can't at all relate completely because really Bill like does a lot of the teaching and the leading, and he's more in with people's like experience. I mean, I'm certainly supporting him, but it's definitely like an exhausting thing to be holding that space. And that's kind of like maybe an overused term, but it's true. And you don't know what's going to come up for people, and just being able to create that safety and kind of guide them through is like a really huge thing. But yeah, so we're very much looking forward to coming, and sort of all the things you've talked about, and just where your perspective and your journey is absolutely, like, to us sounds like that's sort of where I thought it would be such a great an open community to host and have people experience it. So we're looking forward to it.
Yeah.
Very much looking forward to having you. I think oh gosh, it's so refreshing from my perspective to see people doing what you guys are doing and bringing awareness to a topic that can be so massively, oh gosh, affected by what we do in the gym. That honestly, when I saw years ago, I think it was Ben Massey that shared something from Bill, and I was like, oh my word, that really hits home. That resonates a lot. And I've followed you guys ever since. So to be able to have you come to the gym, my gym, and to potentially help and influence or just share and bring it into people's awareness of members in the gym or people that are nearby, I'm very grateful.
Well, we're grateful to come, and I think one of the things that actually talked a little bit about this last week on a CrossFit Health podcast that we were having a conversation on. As coaches, as leaders, as affiliate owners, as all of that, really people who guide and serve others and provide value to others. I'll speak from my experience and tell me if this deviates from yours. But there's almost this unquenchable drive to accumulate more knowledge and learn more so that you can distill that, package it, share it, deliver it, and influence others. And we view ourselves almost as these just kind of flow through kind of things. So like, okay, cool. Someone's teaching this. I'm going to take it. I'm going to share it. I'm going to connect it to others. And that's a wonderful thing. However, it's also very common that like we don't necessarily experience or invest in ourselves to the point of today's workout with you, where it's like, hey, I'm gonna check the box. I'm gonna not to say check the box, but like I'm gonna get it done because I've got a lot of things to get done. Like impressive people typically don't do just one thing in the day and call it good. And it's like, all right, all these things, and sometimes you forget to allow yourself to have that experience. And one of the things I think that with like mental health and mindset and identity and all these different things is that it is very difficult to talk about. It's very difficult to have conversation about it. We're limited by just the limitations of language are a thing. And with ethos, one of the things we feel very strongly in is the transformative power of just having an experience. And not necessarily so that you can leverage it and be better in class. Yes, of course. That's that's a very nice byproduct, but it's not the primary intent. And the primary intent is for people to, really have an empowering, transformative experience at a level that's like right and true to them. And hopefully through, through the course of the weekend and the 2 days and getting to know people and sort of how we've sort of planned it to go, that becomes felt, not just like known up in the head, if that makes sense.
Well, it's almost like where we started talking about the cold exposure. Like you started with a very cognitive kind of, oh, this is good for this. And then it became just like an experience of being in nature.
Absolutely.
So, sure, you can go on and use that for other things, but just being in the experience and then letting it, of course, influence you. And it's cool to see people like you who are serving other people all the time just participate with and go shoulder to shoulder with their members and have an experience and not necessarily, hand over the wheel and be like,
Absolutely.
okay, like,
be part of the community
I don't need to
created.
Yeah.
I'm
So,
with you there.
yeah. Well, thank you for taking the time, also for being patient and with all of our time change issues and technology issues. But I'm so glad that we did it. And thanks to my wonderful known, technological skill that I had us turn off and on the machine, and it worked.
It worked.
And it's cool that we can say we'll see you within the year.
See you soon.
So soon.
Thanks.
We'll have to offline talk about booking what the reality is of driving to said sky cottage, booking the Airbnb, and getting the full experience. So, yeah.
You're more than welcome to.
All right. Well,
Oakley, what's the best place people can find you?
I guess social media is the best place, unless you are in person. If you're in person, then Forest Flow CrossFit is the way. But yeah, social media.
and you're right by Manchester, right? And you're
Not
right by
too far
Manchester.
away. We're about an hour north of Manchester.
Okay. Cool.
Very cool.
All right. Well, thank you.
Thank you so much. This was great. This was just a wonderful chat. Yeah, thank you.
Enjoy the beauty of your scenery.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
All right.